Hey there, hope you're doing well. My name is Lockie and this is the Coastwatch Football Podcast. It's the show where we talk all things across the A-League men's competition as well as my team, Central Coast Mariners, coming to you today from a little bit of a different setting to what we're usually used to here on the Coastwatch Football Podcast, but still here to talk about a number of issues surrounding the competition at the moment because there are a number of things that need to be discussed. And this is what the podcast is for. It's a bit more of the long-form content. If you're familiar with the Coastwatch Football YouTube channel, of course, we've got the round reviews and previews that are happening. And this podcast is nice. As I always say, just sit down, slow things down a little bit. And of course, hope you guys have had a wonderful holiday period, Christmas period. If you're having a break from work or school, hope it's gone well so far and hope you're staying safe and healthy because of course, the pandemic isn't helping things at the moment. Of course, it's not helping anyone and it's certainly not helping the A-League men's competition from this past round 6 in the A-League men's competition. 4 out of the 6 games were postponed and we spoke about it in the round 6 review that was uploaded yesterday on the past Monday. We talked about the 2 games that did happen to just coincidentally be played at the exact same time, and all other games were postponed, unfortunately. So the big news is there's only 3 clubs now in the A-League men's competition that have been unaffected by COVID at this stage that haven't reported positive COVID cases, from what we know. That could change at the time of recording this. That could change because honestly, the way it's going at the moment, it's like we're operating by like a day-by-day, even hour-by-hour basis. Like the Central Coast Mariners against Wellington Phoenix game, which I was, of course, going to at Central Coast Stadium yesterday. I was scheduled for the 27th of December, Monday afternoon. It was called off. It was around 12:30 p.m. when Mariners made the post online that the game was called off. So, just barely 3.5 hours before kickoff. So we're sort of acting on our feet a little bit in terms of what's happening, but adapting to the situation, of course. And of course, it was even some FFA Cup games. I think it was 3 FFA Cup games scheduled for last Wednesday, just before Christmas, and all 3 of those postponed as well. So it's not helping the scheduling as well, considering that there has been, these cup games have basically been happening every single, during midweek for basically every week for the past month or so now. So it's hectic stuff trying to get the scheduling in as well, but hopefully everything gets sorted. The good thing is we do have time, and it's not like there are necessarily heaps and heaps of games stacked up. If you think, I know a lot of you guys listen to the podcast, follow the Premier League, and it's a bit more hectic over there because they've got other competitions, European competitions to handle and stuff as well. So it's slightly easy, I guess, to shuffle things around. But let's jump into some questions right now. This podcast, we've got some great questions coming in, and I'll be answering them throughout this episode. And of course, these have been sent in over Instagram stories or on the community post on YouTube, which I shoot up the day before the podcast around Monday, Sunday-ish. And let's jump into these right now. And of course, we do have a lot of questions coming in regarding the COVID situation, and some people asking, should the competition be postponed until it is controlled? We've got another one here from Evan who says the A-League needs to go into a bubble. And look, it's tricky, and honestly, I feel like we're still at an early stage with this current sort of outbreak, I want to say. And I do want to preface this as well by saying it goes without saying that I'm by no means an expert, and this is coming from the opinion of just a football fan. So just want to preface whatever I say by saying that. So, look, the bottom line is, and this goes out without saying as well, is that we of course all want to see football matches happen. It contributes to our mental well-being, to our mental health. It can, it's something that we look forward to. And for me personally, to see my Central Coast Mariners play every weekend, it's a highlight of the week for me, every single week. And, when the game was postponed, I was really bummed. I was really bummed out yesterday because I was looking forward to the game and, looking forward to what would have been a 3rd consecutive home win for the Central Coast Mariners, potentially. So should it be postponed? Look, I don't think they will. Obviously, it feels like ages ago was it 2 seasons ago where, of course, we had the big break. That was sort of the initial, when, the pandemic initially started, and we sort of went on a break for, 2-3 months or something like that. It feels like ages ago now. It was a year and a half ago around about that. And it's crazy to think that we're sort of still we're discussing a similar thing. it should be brought up that we saw in the NRL this past season in the NRL competition, that they did do a bubble system. They shifted all the teams up to Queensland, and that, from what I saw, seemed to work. They managed to get the competition happening, and it's probably something that the people in charge of the competition have thought about. And I'm sure they do have contingencies. Even though heading into this season, it looked pretty chill in terms of, pandemic and all that sort of stuff. It looked like the league was going to be unaffected. They pushed the kickoff back a few weeks, just to make sure, borders and everything, make sure to get everything cool with that. And then, the first few weeks of competition, I was like, okay, yeah, we're all good. And then obviously this recent outbreak, and, it sort of all come up and is another issue again. I think there is a possibility that we would go into a bubble, and I wouldn't mind it. I do think so much about the welfare of the players and the staff who have to spend so much time away from family and friends. And, thoughts go out to the guys at Perth Glory who have had a really rough past month or so, I guess. They've been all over the place, and I'm pretty sure they're back at Western Australia at the moment, spending Christmas there. Wellington Phoenix, we know the sacrifice that they've made, which is just incredible, just to get this competition up and running. So look, honestly, I mean, these guys are professionals at the end of the day, as they say, and to get the competition running, that is maybe a possibility. I wouldn't be surprised if we see it happening. I think it's unlikely. I think that's unlikely. I think they'll try and soldier on at the moment. I think we will see more postponements as well, just to answer some of those questions there. We will see more postponements. At this current stage, in round 7, there has been a couple of postponements, obviously, that we know about previously. Perth Glory still, have to get their stuff sorted out. But, there's still a bunch of games happening in round 7 in the A-League men's competition. For example, my Central Coast Mariners play this coming Friday, New Year's Eve. Which is the biggest game on the calendar for Central Coast Mariners fans. It's generally the best attended game as well in the calendar year for us. So, simply fingers crossed that it's all good, it all goes ahead, everything runs smoothly. But the issue is we've had 9 A-League men's teams in the past maybe like 2-3 weeks that have reported positive cases. And, there's not much we can do about it. There's simply not much we can do about it. At the end of the day, it's sort of out of our control. If these players are positive cases, what are we going to do? So, look, as I said, bottom line, we want these games to go ahead. We'd love for these games to go ahead. If that means the teams go into a bubble situation, maybe moving as they did, a year and a half ago, shifting all the teams to New South Wales, which probably seems like the most likely place to go to if they were to do a bubble. Maybe. I think time will tell. In a week's time, it might look completely different. Like a week ago, I didn't expect myself to be here answering all these questions about, going into bubbles and postponing games. Like, it's really sort of exploded a little bit, to see the 3 FFA Cup games postponed last week, 4 out of 6 games postponed from this past weekend in the A-League men's competition. It's hectic stuff, and it's worrying, and as fans, we should be concerned, because it's like, is everything going to be okay? Like, is this year's season in jeopardy? And as I mentioned, I think the guys in charge do have a plan, and will have contingencies, in plan to make sure that everything goes ahead as planned. So, the question: should we postpone the season? Should we suspend it? And that's another option. I don't think I've mentioned as well. Do we just take a break for a couple, 2-3 weeks? Honestly, I wouldn't mind that. Yeah. Just to make sure that we don't have this thing of like every week just postponements here and there. I hate looking at the ladder and seeing teams that have played, 4, 3 games, 6, 7 games. It makes it every week with a ladder. It's hard to judge, because you're taking into account, like, oh yeah, this team has 3 games in hand, blah blah blah. That's what we're seeing in the Premier League at this current moment in time, where things are just all over the place, and it's tricky to get a gauge on things when the ladder looks like that. So that's all I'm going to say in terms of lockdowns and pandemics, and not lockdowns, but like in terms of postponing games and all that sort of stuff as well. Hey, let's talk about some football stuff as well. We've got a very simple question in here from, I believe it's Brando here on Instagram, who asks, who's going to win the league? A very simple question, but a good question to ask at this current point in time. And I do have an answer for you. And I genuinely believe that the premiers, not the champions, I'm just gonna go premiers to start off with, is going to be Melbourne Victory. Seeing them defeat Western United, wasn't the easiest game for Melbourne Victory, but to get a gritty 3-1 win against the best defense in the competition was very impressive this past weekend. And the depth they have is one of their biggest traits. They've got a fantastic coach who has got them clicking. From day one, it's been working for them. Obviously, they slipped against Perth Glory, losing 3-0 at home. I think that'll just be a small blip on the radar, as they say. I think that'll be a small result in the context of things in Melbourne Victory season. I just see them, they're playing with such confidence. The likes of Jake Brimmer, Brillante, Margiotta settling in really well and just growing with confidence each game. And then you've got the danger men, Falami, Rojas, Economides, Volupolai coming off the bench. And in defense, I haven't even mentioned the defenders, Jason Gary getting his first goal on the weekend, Miranda, Hamill, Sporanovic, Broxham's experience, Davidson. This is a team that I believe will win the competition this season. I genuinely believe that. There's no other teams that I'm that confident in winning the competition besides Melbourne Victory. Will they win the championship? So now I'm just saying premiership. I think I've got the team to go the length of the season, the regular season. But do they have the team to defeat maybe a Melbourne City in a semi-final or even a grand final? Imagine a Melbourne Derby grand final. I'm going to say yes, but I'm not fully convinced just yet. I think Melbourne City will bounce back and will be up there as well. Sydney FC are building some good form at the moment as well. Obviously, Western and Macarthur have both made positive starts to the season, and hopefully my Central Coast Mariners can be up and around there as well. So at the moment, I'm back in Melbourne Victory. Speaking of Sydney FC, actually, we've got a question here from Flynn on Instagram who asks, have Sydney FC turned the ship? And are they moving back towards the top of the ladder? It's really funny because literally 2 weeks ago, I was getting questions. We did another Q&A episode of the podcast, and I was getting questions about, should Corica be sacked? Sydney FC, are they done? Are they over? And now it's looking the other way after 2 consecutive wins, a 2-1 win against Wellington Phoenix at home last week, and then a big 3-0 win against Macarthur FC, which was an impressive result against a bull side who has been very impressive so far this season. And it's been the young guys that have been getting it done. Bahagia, Patrick Wood, but Max Burgess was fantastic on the weekend as well. Patrick Yazbek coming into midfield, I think, has been a masterstroke for Steve Corica's side. So are they moving back towards the top of the ladder? I'm not convinced that they're going to finish top 2 this year. I think the slow start will hurt them, and I think it would take a lot for them to finish towards the top, especially, again, we all know about the injury to Luke Bratton. Costa Barbarouses is still out for a few more weeks. I think the likes of Melbourne City, Western United might jump ahead of them. Those 3 Victorian sides just look so good at the moment. I think they'll definitely finish top 6. Sydney FC will finish top 6. They have to. Probably top 4. I'm looking at 3rd or 4th for Sydney FC at the moment. But it's looking good. They're looking like they're getting back to winning ways, getting back to playing with confidence. We've seen, as a Mariners fan, I know what it's like bringing in young players and injecting that youth and seeing it work. And it's good to see Corica's doing that now. They were without Ninkovic, Lafondra, brought in these young guys, and it worked. So the fascinating thing for the Sky Blues is in their next games, in a few weeks' time when they have, a fully fit squad almost, bar the injury to Luke Bratton, does Corica opt for Max Burgess over Miloš Ninkovic? Does Patrick Wood start over Lafondra? I don't know about that, but you know what I mean, right? He's got some decisions to make, and those decisions could impact the way they go, how they go this season. So headaches for Steve Corica, but good headaches for them, and they are playing well at the moment. That was a good win on the weekend as well. So yes, they will be towards the top of the table. Not the top. I don't think they'll make a push for the top this season for me, but. We've got to appreciate how they're playing at the moment. We've got a question here from David on Instagram. Thoughts on Western Sydney Wanderers appointing Gary Van Egmond as assistant coach? And I've already seen a bit of banter, slander online about yet another Newcastle Jets related signing at Western Sydney Wanderers. If you're not familiar, of course, Carl Robinson joining the Wanderers from Newcastle Jets. And numerous players when it comes to, Dimitri Petratos, Johnny Kutrumbas, Steven Ugarkovic. The names go on. And, of course, players have gone the other way as well to Western Sydney Wanderers. So, look, it's an interesting signing. And from what we've heard, he's going to come in as sort of an assistant, another one of the coaches to help out the likes of Carl Robinson and Lebanon Heliti at Western Sydney Wanderers. And it's. I almost wonder if this is maybe a slow fade out of Carl Robinson as head coach. Maybe they'll slowly transition him out and slowly bring Van Egmond in. That's just pure speculation. But it is a fascinating one to me, and I wonder how that's going to play out, having those, the likes of, Robinson, Haliti, Van Egmond. Are they going to be able to gel together? Is this something, that Robinson has been involved with? Was he part of the planning to bring in Van Egmond for this support? But obviously, it's good to see that they have made some sort of move. It's probably not the move that Wanderers fans would have wanted to have seen. They probably would, they want to see the back of Carl Robinson, to be honest, at the moment, with the way that they've been performing. But it's a fascinating one. I'm interested to see how it plays out. But yeah, let's keep an eye on it. As I mentioned there, maybe this is a slow transition out for Carl Robinson and a transition in for the era of Van Egmond at Western Sydney Wanderers. But yes, yet another Newcastle Jets appointment. We've got a very simple question in here. Mariners related question in here from Dylan on Instagram. Cy Goddard or Mateus Moresche? Both guys have actually made a really good start to their life on the Central Coast, and both have been starting and have been playing some regular football and are looking fit and fresh. If I had to pick one who I've been more impressed with, it's close because both have actually had good games. Cy played well on the Mariners' last A-League game against the Wanderers. Moresche had a fantastic game against Sydney FC in that 2-0 win at home. And I would probably say Cy Goddard. I think he's just such a dynamic player. He's not afraid to take on players, and he's got a fantastic corner delivery, fantastic cross through of the ball. He's fantastically two-footed. I don't know another player in the competition who is better with 2 feet. And when it comes to Cy Goddard, we've seen him play, inch-perfect switches of the play, long balls with both feet. We've seen it with both feet so far this season on numerous occasions. So I'd probably pick Cy Goddard. I think he brings a different dynamic to this team. He's a sort of player that we were lacking. And when you look at the squad from last year, I don't know if we had that sort of player. Maybe the player who's most similar to him was maybe Danny De Silva. But yeah, I really like Cy Goddard, and fantastic for him to get his first Mariners goal against the Western Sydney Wanderers the other day. But just on Mateus Moresche, I'm so excited to see what he does this competition. Hopefully he does get his first A-League men's goal, because of course that goal against Sydney FC was ruled as an own goal. But he has gotten the score sheet a couple of times in the FFA Cup, which is fantastic for him. So both have been fantastic. We've got some more questions coming in here from on YouTube. This one comes in from Charles on YouTube. Thanks for the question, mate. Can the Wanderers, with all the talent across the park, turn their season upside down? And even with a new coach, when will Carl Robinson be sacked? So, a couple of questions there. I'll answer the one in terms of their talent on the park. Can they, with the talent on the park that they have at the moment, can Western Sydney Wanderers turn the season around? The answer is a resounding yes, because look, my opinion stands is from what it was entering this preseason. This is the best Wanderers squad we've seen in maybe 5 years. With the names that they have, Terry Antonis, Dimitri Petratos, Tom Mohamed, Kajira Ogawa has showed promise. In defence, Reece Williams, Mejias, their keeper, has looked good as well. So on paper, it's a fantastic squad. And that's the big problem at the moment for the Western Sydney Wanderers. They have such a good team. They've got the players there. They just don't have the coach. They don't have the leadership to get these. They don't have the cohesion at the moment to get the performances and get the results that they need, that this team should be getting. Because that's the thing. This team should be finishing high. This team should be in and around the top 6, and they just haven't been cracking it yet. 1 win so far in the A-League men's competition, knocked out of the FFA Cup against NPL side Apia Leichhardt. So yes, they can turn it around, but it's an interesting point you raised there from Charles. Do they, even with a new coach, is bringing in a new coach at this stage the answer for Western Sydney Wanderers? And obviously, I just touched on Gary Van Egmond before. Gary Van Egmond is a good coach and has had A-League success in the past. Won the championship with Newcastle Jets back in 2008. No one knows at the end of the day if a coach is going to come in and turn a team around. Having said that, we did know that Tony Popovich going to Melbourne Victory was a good move, and he was able to turn that team around. But there's only a few coaches that would be able to come in and do a successful job, and those are the likes of Tony Popovich, Graham Arnold, Ange Postecoglou. So I don't know if there's another coach out there at the moment that's available and willing to come to Western Sydney who are going to turn this team around. That being said, Wanderers fans would probably argue that anything would be better than Carl Robinson at the moment, and they're probably right. It probably is at the point now where they should try something new. And, it'll be interesting to see, as I mentioned, what Gary Van Egmond will bring to the side. Maybe there's a different sort of coaching style or different sort of, elements that he'll bring to this side. So when will Carl Robinson get sacked is the third part of that question from Charles. Look, I said I've been of the opinion now after they lost to the Mariners 2-0, 10 days ago now. After losing to the Mariners, if they had lost, of course, the game against the Jets was postponed, but I was of the opinion that if they had lost that, like a solid loss, like a 2-3, 4-0 loss, not by like one goal, but like a multiple goal conceding loss, I wouldn't have been surprised to see Robinson go. So I think maybe he's got, but and we know all about the off-field issues at the Wanderers at the moment. I think it might be maybe another like 3 or 4 games. I think if they don't pick up a win for another 3 or 4 games, he has to go. He definitely has to go, right? Whether they make that decision, who knows? But they should go, because time will run out very quickly, especially in a very competitive A-League season that we're seeing at the moment, where teams are looking really good at the top of the table at the moment. And man, if Western Sydney Wanderers fail to make the top 6 this year again with this fantastic side, and they tried to implement this new style of football, they're playing with a 4-2-3-1 formation. If they don't make the top 6, I don't know what they're going to do. They need just a complete revolution at the club, from top to bottom. And again, Wanderers fans, I'm not a Wanderers fan, so I'm just speaking from the outside. But that's just what it looks like for me. This is a side who had so much success in the early years and need to be up there and competing, especially with the team that they have at the moment. Hey, we've got an interesting question here from Santiago on YouTube, and this is one we could probably unpack for a while. I won't ramble on for too long. But when is Australian football reaching its peak? Is it going to be in the next few years? And this is a multifaceted question that we could, as I mentioned, dive into for a while. But reaching its peak, I guess it depends on what we define as peak. Reaching its peak, I don't think it's within the next few years. No. I don't want to say peak, because that maybe suggests that there's a point in time where it's gonna be fantastic and then it's gonna drop down again. Some people might suggest that maybe the A-League hit its peak maybe around 2012, 13, 14, 15, around those times where Western Sydney Wanderers came to the competition and were doing really well. That active support was looking really good off the field as well. When will it hit its peak? I think maybe it's still another like 5, 10, 15 years off until this competition is really solid in its foundations, has a good variety of teams from different locations. I think we need to get to the point where we have 16 teams that are all secure and safe when it comes to financial things and off the field stuff, on the field stuff as well, of course. But I think it absolutely has the potential, and all we want to see as football fans is to see the competition grow here in Australia, and just keep on improving. And I think it will get there. As I mentioned, I think maybe it's hard to say, but maybe another 5, 10 years. I don't think it's something that we'll see in a couple of years' time. And yeah, I don't want to use the term peak, but I just want to say maybe. Look, it's going to be hard for us to get in line with the likes of the AFL, the NRL, sort of the big competitions in Australia, the big domestic sporting competitions in Australia. But I don't think we should be aiming to sort of get up there or maybe like knock one of those guys off. It's simply not going to happen. But we have to sort of find our place in the market where we can, It's hard to say. We have to embrace what I've always been about when it comes to the A-League competition. Is we have to embrace what makes us unique. People should be going to, casual fans should be going to an A-League game and I want it to feel really different to any other sporting competition in Australia, and that means pushing more into active support. We need to see more support thrown to the active fans, because that's a good example of what makes the atmosphere in an A-League game unique. We need to be backing them more, and we need to be encouraging other fans and everything, rather than, I know, of course, there's all sorts of memes and stuff, and that's always great fun, and the banter's great around the A-League. But at the same time, I do want to we should be treating it in a more professional approach, you know what I mean? In taking it more seriously, if you will. Not that we aren't at the moment, but, rather than treating it like, oh yeah, the A-League's on, like, taking, I don't want to bring up the whole Euro snob thing, and I'm not going to get into that. And respect if you want to follow European football, like whatever. But I feel like we see people like taking, obviously so many followers, as I mentioned earlier, of the Premier League and in European leagues. But I feel like I get the sense that when it comes to the A competitions, it's a bit of like, it's almost like just like a bit of fun, or a bit of, it's sort of a bit of nothing. And I'd love to get to the point where we can speak. People can be following their A-League clubs as if it is a Premier League team that they've been following, since they've been a kid. And I think we're seeing that. I think we're seeing a generation now of kids who are coming up who have grown up with these teams. And I mean, me personally, I like to think I'm a representation of that. If you're a long-time listener of the podcast, I've said it a few times before. Mariners, my team, Central Coast Mariners, my local team, came into existence when I was 9 years old. When I didn't have a team, I wasn't following anyone in the Premier League. I didn't really know much about world football, to be honest. Knew about the Socceroos, that was about it. And then a team in my area here on the Central Coast came up, and started following them when I was 9 years old. And here I am now, I'm 25 years old, talking to you here on the internet, and so passionate about it. And this is just sort of the first generation, the first wave of these A-League fans. So we are going to see over the next few decades, it's just going to keep growing and growing. And I'm so optimistic about the future of the league. So does that answer your question? I don't know. But, obviously, as you get the sense there, it's something that we can go into quite a lot. And if you've got any opinions on that, we'd love to hear from you guys as well. So if you want to jump down into the comments, or you can hit me up with a DM. It is a fascinating debate in terms of not simply when is Australian football reaching its peak, but like, I guess that just, ties into where does it fit into the sporting landscape here in Australia as well. So yeah, dude, it's something that a lot of people bring up, and it's something that gets brought up, I feel like, every single year as well. Hey, let's answer. We'll do one more question here as well to finish off. Another one here from Evan on Instagram. Sydney FC. Well, it's not rather a question, but it's rather a statement. Sydney FC need to persist with the youngsters. Well, this actually, does tie in with what I've talked about before in regards to Sydney FC and their performances at the moment. And I would agree with you. Evan. I think they do need to persist with the youngsters. And as I mentioned before, as a Central Coast Mariners fan, I know what it's like to see the young players implemented into the side, and it work. And it's working so well right now at the Mariners. So many young guys getting, especially on the score sheet in our FFA Cup game against Upper Leichhardt last week. So yes, I think Patrick Yazbek coming into the side is fantastic. Allows Caceres to play further up the field, which has been a good move for Sydney FC. And Patrick Wood is a player that I'm really excited about. I think Sydney FC fans should be really hyped for, because he's the kind of player that is just growing with confidence with each game. And it was good to see him grab another goal against MacArthur on the weekend as well. So, yes, I agree. I think Sydney FC do need to persist with the youngsters. And as I mentioned, it'll be interesting to see what they do with that, what Steve Corica does with that, in the upcoming games when the likes of Lafondra, Ninkovic and Barbarousse is coming back into contention for selection. But hey, guys, thanks so much for sending in those questions. Some really thought-provoking ones as well. Obviously, the big talking points at the moment surrounding the pandemic and postponements of the games. And look, of course, I let my thoughts known about it. We'd love to see the games go ahead. Is a bubble option, is that a potential option for them to go for at the moment? Potentially. We'll have to wait and see. I just said a potential 7 times in the past 10 seconds. Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out this episode of the Coastwatch Football Podcast. Of course, this podcast comes out every single Tuesday on all podcast platforms. So that includes the likes of Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and also the full video episodes available on the Coastwatch Football YouTube channel. If you don't know, we do the round reviews every Monday, podcast Tuesday, and the round previews every Thursday. So join me here on Thursday on YouTube for the round 7 A-League preview. Hopefully we have as many games as possible going forward. Have a fantastic week, guys. The next time you'll see me in a podcast episode, it'll be in the year 2022. And this wraps up, of course, I should mention it, 1 year of doing Coastwatch Football Podcast. We started off in my little bedroom at my old house, doing the podcast. There was some very hot summer days cramped up in that bedroom with the fan rolling. You might have heard the fan in the background of some of those early podcasts. And so great to see that there's a whole bunch of listeners and viewers of these podcasts now. So I do appreciate it a lot. Thank you a lot. And of course, if you do enjoy this podcast, the best way to support is to hit like, subscribe, give it a rating on a podcast platform. It does help out a lot, and it helps the podcast grow. And really excited and stoked that you guys are part of this podcast family. And awesome stuff. All right, have a great New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Enjoy that period, and I'll see you guys next week.